Welcome to the Disruptance Podcast. The Disruptance Podcast is the show that disrupts the way entrepreneurs think to make them more profitable and impactful. Rethink tired and outdated business norms to welcome innovation and unlock your unlimited possibilities. Here are your hosts, Eric Forney and Greg Fowler.
Eric, we got another special one today on the Disruptance Podcast, and that one to me is a very, very particular topic for most of the audience to hear. It's been thrown around a million times over and over. The pursuit of more, and more direct to that, when is enough enough? I think that is the never-ending cycled question as entrepreneurs, as spouses, parents, friends, family members. When is enough enough? Where do you want to dive into that, Eric? What stands out?
Well, when I hear that, I think of it depends on who you're asking, right? If you're asking Hudson, when is there enough elf on the shelf? The answer is there's no such thing as enough is enough.
Yes.
If you ask my wife, when is there enough sun and sand on a beach? The answer is never enough. And so
think about ice cream. Think about ice cream. When is there enough scoops?
There's no such thing. There's no such thing, Greg. There isn't. And so understanding the contextualization of it obviously makes sense. It's an interesting disease. Mm-hmm. The interesting disease is the disease of more. Mm-hmm. And most entrepreneurs I know have the disease of more. And I'm not going to point fingers and pretend that I probably don't also have the infliction of that same disease, although it's likely been scaled back or neutered ever so slightly comparative to maybe what it was 5 years ago or something. And I say that only because I work equally as much today as I did 5 years ago.
Okay.
The difference is why I choose to work today versus what was the driver of pursuing more previously.
Sure.
And so to me, the concept of the pursuit of more, or when is enough, stems from the reason why we're doing something. What is the root cause or the trigger for the need for more? If it's to satisfy and fulfill a gaping, never-ending hole of not thinking that we're enough as individuals, then there's no such thing as enough in the pursuit of more. It is, we have to fix what's missing inside of us, what we're doing, what we're trying to prove, or to who we're trying to prove it to, in order to actually overcome that infliction of being obsessed with trying to achieve more. If you think about it, it's interesting. There's kind of this tongue-in-cheek comment of, Warren Buffett, I think at one point had talked about being with the top 200 highest net worth individuals, and 200 of the top 400 people on the Forbes 400. So the wealthiest of the wealthiest billionaires. And his perspective was that the one thing that they didn't have was happiness, or to know when enough was enough, right? And that's where the idea that Buffett says is that the way to determine if your life has been a success is, do the people that you want to love you at the end of your life choose to still love you? And so getting clear delineation on what is it that you're actually pursuing, and is that the path to achieving enough, or is it an endless pursuit of nothingness?
As you break that down, though, Eric, and it makes me kind of process when most people think about this category, this topic, at first, and besides talking about elf on a shelf and or ice cream.
Correct.
When you mention, most people are looking at, or the sand on a beach or sunshine.
Yeah.
You got to look at it.
You were going to say sex too, Greg. And
that's there too.
I could accept that too. I get it.
That is an answer, though. When is enough enough? It depends. It depends on who you
different show. It's a different show. We will not pull the wives. Okay, cool.
But you look at it from the standpoint, people, they really identify and address money. I think that's where it really comes down to it. For me, I would base it to say there's never enough time. I think time is the number one commodity based off of it. When is enough enough? It brings me back to the old adages of, are vampires real? could you live forever, Eric, with enough time throughout?
Have you seen Congress, Greg? Have you seen Congress? I mean, what do you mean, can you live forever? I'm convinced that they will.
Having the time there, right? But I mean, to me, I think most individuals that are tuning into this with us right now and enjoying this dialogue, they're in that proverbial when is enough on a financial standpoint. And especially as an entrepreneur, you're always trying to reach different milestones or goals. A mutual friend of ours, Adam Hergenrother, he actually just put up a post 2 days ago on Instagram.
Oh, nice.
And it was right on this particular topic. Now, I'll show you just to the viewers on the screen that it is there. And there's a very specific dollar amount that he had listed onto this topic for monetary sense. And the basis was $75,000 to $100,000, the amount of income up to which earners have significant increases of happiness. So somebody who's making less than 75,000 to 100,000, when they get to the 75 to 100, they feel an increased amount of happiness in comparison to if the goal is monetary. But then what he also had in here in this study that was polled, the next designation is 400,000 to 500,000. The increase of earner's expectation, increase of happiness was incremental. It was minimal.
Yeah.
And then 500K plus, it was actually happiness levels dropped.
That's right.
So
Are you trying to get me to disagree with Adam? Is this what this is? Or are you trying to plot how many days until I get fired? Is that what you're setting me up for here, Greg? You're like, hey, what do you think about this Hergenrother guy? Is this post full of shit or not, Eric?
Eric, if I was setting you up, I wouldn't have said Adam at all. And then,
there you go. Okay.
Got it. You completely disagree. But really, I mean, there's some interest into that thought. I mean, do you find validity in there? You're talking about monetary standpoints here, Eric. Like where do you find the balance and happiness in the pursuit of the dollar amount, and when is enough? Do you find that there are brackets in there that make sense to what Adam posted up there?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that makes sense in my mind in a few ways. If your basic needs or your perception of security and the ability to provide short range future needs is is insecure or highly unknown, I anticipate having a lot of anxiety. I've just never met someone who was paycheck to paycheck who didn't have anxiety around the instability of that scenario.
Okay.
Therefore, that part makes sense to me.
Sure.
Is not having a safety net leaves people without the perception of safety, hence the term safety net. Now,
Gotcha.
as you elevate the amount of income that you have, you begin to provide time or friction removing activities by paying to remove the friction or by paying to gain back time.
Gotcha.
So if you, like once it's almost this like Maslow's hierarchy conversation where he goes, okay, cool. So once I have level 1 and level 2 provided for, now what most of us want is more time or time to do the things that we want to do, or better yet, to not have to do the things that we hate doing.
For sure.
So for instance, I have no interest in doing the laundry, mowing, or cleaning my house.
Gotcha.
So one of the very first things that I did when capable of paying someone to do that was I left my lawnmower at my last house in 2013.
There you go.
So I haven't owned one in 11 years. And yet if I wasn't able to get to that threshold of providing some degree of safety net, I would have to bring my lawnmower with me, and I would have to trade something that I enjoy doing for something that I don't enjoy doing. It makes sense that next band up from, say, 100K would allow us to gain back time to do the things that we enjoy more enjoyment, more happiness. Therefore, the interesting thing is it's a fallacy to make a corollary statement that is biased by a figure. And what I mean by that is $500,000 plus is merely a correlation. It has nothing to do with causation around happiness. the misnomer or the fallacy is believing that if you earn more, you're less happy. It's if you earn more and you absorb more headache,
Mm-hmm.
and you take back the shit that you were trying to avoid by making more money because you, like Biggie, get more money, more problems,
Mm-hmm.
then in fact you would see a decreasing rate of happiness on earning more. So,
Mm-hmm.
for instance, one of the biggest all right, I'm gonna piss some people off here, and I'm gonna
Let's do
say a statement that will sound like it's black and white, and there's shades of gray in it. I don't know if there's all 50 shades or not, Greg, but there are minimum shades of gray in this statement. And what I'm about to say is that I have zero interest investing in real estate. Period.
Gotcha.
And I'm also a real estate agent, and I've also made a lot of money investing in real estate over my adult life. And it was the way that I was able to actually get into an entirely different career was through the money that I made investing in real estate. And yet I have 0.0% interest in investing in real estate because real estate is annoying.
What changed, Eric?
It's annoying.
Okay.
What changed was it requires time and attention.
Mm-hmm.
It's noisy. You know what's not noisy? Buying the S&P 500 and then never looking at it again. And
Sure.
you know what? Tim Cook at Apple has not called me to ask if I could come unclog his toilet, mow his lawn, or deal with the new noise ordinance that is affiliated with the S&P 500 that I own. Right? No one gives a shit about Eric Forney, whether I own that sliver of share, but they do care when I own the property, and that makes real estate annoying. It's I love the YouTube goons who pretend to make more money in real estate, and the reality is they're just selling you to buy a course, and that's full of cliches and misnomers, and yet they sell the fallacy of passive income. And I've never owned a piece of real estate that was passive.
Wow.
Because I'm either managing a person or I'm managing a property.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, I still have to manage a problem. I've never met a person. That's not true. I got a couple of people that I have that I manage that don't cause problems.
Right.
But either way, I'm still allocating time, and yet I could put money elsewhere with no time and no problems. And so that's the difference. Is if you pursue more and get more problems, then I see the happiness actually decreasing.
So where's that fine line? Because people that are tuning in here and they can track what you're saying. All right. So as long as
that was a lot. I don't know where it went either.
You're talking about Biggie, 50 Shades of Grey. This was great. This one is a slam dunk for me, Eric. I'm a fan. I was
I'm following. I'm tracking. I got this. I know exactly where you're going, Eric.
but for me, I think ultimately, where does that fine line go? So if they get it and they say, all right, Eric, I really believe exactly what you're saying. I understand where you're going.
Yeah.
How do I find myself in a position to find that happy place, right? Where I'm not in the pursuit for more, but I'm gaining, if that makes any sense. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so in per usual, I'm just going to steal from the first book of Gary Keller, chapter 3, verse 7 here. Last week I spent a little bit of time with Gary, and he made a couple of comments kind of to answer your question that I stood out to me. He said that you only get freedom when you know the cost of it. You only gain freedom when you know the cost of it. And most will associate success by a number that's attached to their either results or to their bank account. And yet the equation for success has two variables. It's what you need to net, and then what you need to net in order to live your lifestyle. And most people fail to account for the second half of the equation, what you need to net in order to live your desired lifestyle. If you don't know the cost that you will have to give up, you can't have the freedom. And so how I interpret that is like, I would like to have a six pack and just look precisely like, Greg and Adam Hergenrother do, but I'm just
It
not
takes
willing
work.
to give
It takes
up.
work,
It
Eric.
takes
Yeah.
a lot,
I
dude.
mean,
Yeah. And so I'm just not willing to give up what it takes.
yeah.
I'm unwilling to sacrifice the cost that would be required in order to attain that outcome. Therefore, I would set a different goal or a different expectation with a lot of clarity on what I'm willing to pay for the outcome.
Mm.
So I might say, I'll own real estate, but I'll sell it as soon as I have to put in this much time or this much headache or any other variable that I don't want.
Wow.
I might buy a business
Mm.
and say, I'll only own the business so long as it doesn't require more X amount of time, money, headache, resources, brain fog, legalities, whatever it is.
Sure.
At that point in time, that's my line of what I'm willing to give up.
And that makes a ton of sense, setting those expectations on yourself and the situations that we're putting ourselves in. I mean, you do hear the conversations out there for individuals that say, oh gosh, I know so many wealthy people and they're just miserable. And, here's my perspective on it, hot take. I don't think money has any cause and effect directing off the individual in and of itself.
No.
If you are a miserable person and you hate life and you hate people, you're just going to be a wealthy person that's miserable, that hates life and hates people. And vice versa. If you're positive and happy-go-lucky, you're going to be a wealthy person and or a not so wealthy person. So I think money or lack thereof amplifies. So I don't think that necessarily changes. A lot of people will throw around, as you had mentioned, rest in peace, Biggie Smalls, more money, more problems. I think that in and of itself, I'll quote another musician, and I wouldn't necessarily speak that in the same breath. But it's Ariana Grande.
Okay.
I feel bad to hear anybody in a comparison to Biggie and Ariana, but she has a line in one of her songs where it says something about whoever said money can't solve problems didn't have enough money to solve them. So it's you can take the equation into that coin depending on where you're at in your life. But I think it's really setting those expectations. An interesting conversation that I find myself having, and you see a lot of younger individuals come into this life where, as we grew up, Eric, there was a very specific dialogue into what success looked like. And
are we on the front porch right now, like two old men? Are we going to be like yelling at some young kids to get off my lawn or what?
As long as we're sipping some bourbon, I'm fine.
Okay.
Right now I've got water and Diet Coke, so it's not the same thing. But,
feel you.
But it's interesting to have that perspective. I mean, as growing up, it's like, hey, there's certain expectations of success and what you're supposed to go down and what, that successful life looks like, the family, the house, the career, the path, the retirement, all the different. But younger generations are not necessarily finding a goal to that mold. And the conversation that I'm hearing more time and time again is that pursuit of happiness. It's not necessarily equated to the wealth, but just how you're living your life and how everyday experience is. Not saying that you're couch surfing, or that you're homeless and you're just on park benches. But at the same time, I think there's a higher level of emphasis, more so than ever, on what and how you're spending your time and with who. I could be completely wrong with that, but I'm just hearing that dialogue. I don't know where your thoughts are.
Yeah, so you're spot on in that it's gaining this trend. And here's the awesome part is that they'll never achieve it. Okay, so my Gen Zers, like if you're out looking for happiness, just give up now.
Turn this up, everybody. If you're listening, turn up the volume.
And the reason why is because like TLC learned, is you just can't go chasing waterfalls. Happiness is similar, and that when you go seeking it, what you end up with is unhappiness.
Oof.
It's the problem with progressives. And I would consider myself to be a progressive, but in the sense that I am all for progress. I'm all for the concept. However, the caveat to being one who pursues happiness or who pursues progress is understanding that happiness comes by reviewing the rearview mirror.
Mm.
We have to look at how far we've come in order to actually find the happiness. If we only look forward through the windshield, what we find is more things to be unhappy about.
Mm.
Because the world is never going to be without problems. Greg, the only people who have no problems are those who are dead. And I don't know that many of us are seeking to have that problem.
Nope.
So we have to then realize that the pursuit of happiness is not a life without problems.
Mm.
The pursuit of happiness is accepting the problems.
Wow.
And realizing that that there is no way out of having no problems.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about looking in the rearview mirror, the interesting thing is that, if you just go back over the past 100 plus years or so, 100-ish years, you would say society life has never been better.
Mm.
It's never been better. Last year, Americans worked 37 minutes a day less than they have at any other time in history.
Wow.
And yet people still bitch on the internet. There still is a whole generation who goes, I'm not doing that shit. That sounds terrible. I'd have to work an hour and 37 minutes. Right. And then but yet the reality is that John D. Rockefeller, the wealthiest person in modern history, had no Tylenol, no penicillin, no Zoom, and no email. And he still somehow survived. And none of us would trade his life for our life, because we have far better accommodations. And yet, when you poll Americans about how much happy they are, despite getting a multi exponential increase in overall quality of life, they're no happier today than they were when John D. Rockefeller was alive. And yet, we've seen a 10x improvement in quality of life.
Mm.
Pursuing happiness is a fruitless endeavor.
Wow. And that's a deep thought, as you mentioned that, Eric. I mean, so into the process of when is enough, and I mean, you're really kind of breaking this whole thing down. Where is it stemming from? Where is this whole ideology coming from? That's a question that I'm curious to your perspective.
Yeah, it's the deep state, Greg. It's 100% the deep state. No, I'm kidding. Only because.
Are you though? Are you kidding, Eric?
Here's the first thing that went through my head when you asked the question, which was the lie we've been told. The lie we've been told about, quote, the American dream, or that you can be or do anything. It's just a lie. Mm. I mean that as someone who loves the story of the American dream.
Sure.
Like I have no desire to go anywhere, right? And I wear a bald eagle tank every year for the Indy 500, right? Like I'm all about. I bleed red, white, and blue. Okay, we got bald eagles that nest in our backyard, Greg. I mean, you can't find more red, white, and blue, and yet the concept of the American dream, or that you can be anything that you want, is a fallacy. You can be anything that pays you for the product and the choices that you make. For everyone else, you have to do what's paying, not what you want to do. It doesn't mean that you can't, at some point, pursue whatever your niche interests are. It just means someone has to be willing to pay you for whatever those items are. And then it has to actually deliver you precisely what you want. If you study the regrets of the dying, the interesting thing that you'd find is that those who, at the end of their life, who still have their memory left, they would say that the number one regret is that they didn't live their own life. They lived the life of someone else. And therefore, many times people go pursuing happiness in order to please someone else.
Wow.
It's impossible to achieve that which is not a goal or a virtue of your own. And so it comes from the deep state. No, I'm just kidding. It comes from the idea that that somehow, it's a good message too, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to go upstairs and tell Hudson that he can't be what he puts his focus and intention on.
Right.
I'm not that asshole. I mean, if he could be an elf on a shelf if he wants. And the reality of it is that at some point in time, we have to make decisions that align with what's required in order to provide for what's necessary and what we want most.
with that thought, Eric, what's your perspective on, as individuals throw this around, comparison is the ultimate robber of joy,
Yeah,
happiness? So is it a keeping up with the Joneses sort of thing? Is it looking over your fence and checking out
sure.
what car your neighbor's driving now? Like what is
Yeah.
continually perpetuating this thought process in and above what you just said?
Yeah, you're spot on. So if you mix the idea that you can be or do all things and that all you have to do is be born into somehow this geography, then that entitles you to that. Then you mix it with the fact that, 30 years ago, you could only compare yourself to Tim the Toolman Taylor or someone on the four channels of your TV, right? And
What a great
you could
show.
only you could, right? You could only compare it to your neighbor Wilson and the people that you went to church with, school with, or within some smaller radius.
Sure.
And so celebrities, actors, actresses, they became much of the comparison metric.
Mm-hmm.
And for most people, you realize that that comparison is not worth making.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because if I compare myself to Brad Pitt, he would be embarrassed, and so it's just not worth doing to him.
You would really hurt his self-esteem, Eric.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Brad, if you're tuning in, we're sorry ahead of time. We didn't mean to put you in a sensitive spot. So
what else would he be doing but tuning in? Of course.
He is a fan, I'm sure. So.
That's right. That's right. So I would not have made that comparison. Right. It's the ridiculousness thinking that that little girls are somehow scarred by Barbies, but boys are not by G.I. Joe and He-Man. Mm-hmm. It's just a one-way street. I'm confident. And so we didn't make those comparisons because we understood the difference in attainable and unattainable outcomes. Today, the challenge becomes is everyone has a platform to be quite just like Tim the Toolman Taylor or Gilligan's Island. Mm-hmm. You can compare yourself to anyone and everyone, 4 billion people globally. Mm-hmm. And as a byproduct, it becomes actually a race to the bottom for most people who don't realize it's an endless pursuit of unhappiness. Mm. The hardest part is coming to that awareness and maintaining it. Quite frankly, like Adam does not get on social media at all, mm-hmm. and probably doesn't know his login for that reason. And it's not that, and Adam is one of the most grounded people that you'll ever meet, mm-hmm. and he knows what to not waste his time and attention or the potential to even think about the comparison aspect of it. Mm-hmm. So he just doesn't.
Yeah. Well, it's to the process of what you stated with time and money allocation, what you're talking about for, laundry and for lawn mowing. Adam does that for social media. I mean, he's not on it, but he's on it.
Correct.
Does that make sense? So again, I think that is an important note to take into consideration too. And that's just a massive thought for everybody to really let sink in. I mean, what is the point of doing that and kind of looking at it from that standpoint? And I'm sure it's a cultural thing, as time goes on and there's lots of psychological process into it. But I mean, ultimately, really diving deep into this question, Eric, as to when is enough and kind of the pursuit, of more, you really got to take that into your heart. And that's a very personal question. I think it's a game without end, as you mentioned, if you're going to go down that road. I don't know how you feel about this, but at least for me, going through my life and my career paths and things that have happened, anytime that there's been a monetary goal that was there, very specific in nature, and I thought, when I get to this point, it's just going to be here and it's going to be great.
Yeah, it's going to be easy. That'll solve it. Yeah.
It didn't change much.
Of course. Yeah.
But that doesn't sound sexy. That's not exciting to think about, right?
And you know what you can't do is you can't tell someone who doesn't, you can't tell a broke person that it won't be worth it when they get there and have them believe you.
Because they won't.
Correct.
It's easy for you to say, Eric.
Yes.
You're there.
Correct. And it is easier to say, by the way. It's always easier to say when you have the financial ability to say it than when you don't. Mm-hmm. However, it it still require you, like, it doesn't mean that you arrive and then quit without a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
Or the reality is you were doing the job or doing the work or how, whatever was required to get there as an entrepreneur solely for the money, with no passion and no desire to solve a problem that you believed was meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, I would assume that you realize that, that Gary Keller has $1 or two, to his net worth.
I'm sure there's a few lying around somewhere.
Yeah, a couple, like probably a couple. And so he, he could have quit a long time ago and been perfectly okay financially for a long, long time. Warren Buffett is no different, right? I mean, quite literally, Charlie Munger died at 99 and a half and was still working the week prior.
Wow.
Didn't need to, had a few billion. And yet they showed up and did the job and performed the work, acted as entrepreneurs because they love the job. And, they use the example that I really like and think through a lot myself, which is like, when you were a kid, I don't know if what you like to play, but my friends would have my friends come over, and we lived in the middle of nowhere, or what we like to call Indiana. And we would play outside, and, mom and dad would have to put like the car lights on so that we could play basketball in the driveway and whatever else, the foolish games we would play. And we'd stay out probably all night if they would have let us. And you end up with that level of commitment. Some entrepreneurs carry that same level of like childish excitement and commitment of wanting to play the game as long as they'll let you play the game. And some of them play the game solely for the paycheck.
Wow. Yeah.
And knowing who you're in business with, between who does it for the love of the job or the love of the problem, and those who do it for the paycheck, is a big difference. Because people who get up and love to wake up and just slap the ball around in the backyard will do it for the money or without it.
Yeah.
And I've never met a real estate agent who was like, you know what, Eric, I need to quit your team because we're making so much money that I want to go on my own and help more people. You know what they say? They never say that. Funny enough, it's the craziest thing. I've never had one of them say, I need to quit because I need to go help more people. Nope. They always say, I need to quit because I need to make more money. Or I need to quit because I'll be able to make more money. And what I hear is, you never did it for the people anyway.
There you go.
Because if you were doing the job to help more people, you would say, how can I, in the same amount of time, help more people, knowing that when I help more people, I'll also make more money. Instead, what they say is, I don't want to work anymore, but I'd like to try the fallacy of keeping all of it myself. And what it means is, you'll end up helping fewer people to try to make the same amount of money. So you were never doing it to help people to begin with. And those are the ones who have a shorter career or no career in the industry. Those that sustain do so because they wake up and go, damn, this is a pretty rewarding and meaningful job. I'd like to go out and help more people today.
The fact that you said that, though, Eric, rings true to a lot of individuals that are out there. There's a large level of attrition through the industry in and of itself. And I'm sure that there's a chunk of that percentage that is that individual that you just painted right there.
Oh, absolutely it is. Yeah, I've quite literally never met an agent who, that's not true. I actually interviewed an agent just within the last 6 months. It was the first time. The very first time. I typically ask this question a lot, and I'm like, what is it that you like about the job? What is it you like about the industry? And you get some pretty fascinating answers. And I had one just the other day, said the paycheck. And I said, oh, okay. I've not had anyone tell me that one before. But thank you for being honest. I appreciate that. And, but I finally had one who said, man, I just love to help people buy and sell real estate. And I thought, oh, now you're speaking my language, because that's the reason why I wake up and do this. Sure. My job is a little bit different, but when I woke up every day and helped people buy and sell real estate, the reason I did it was because I loved it. It was awesome. It was rewarding. Knowing that you're helping people solve a problem and you just happen to get paid for it's a pretty badass gig. Not everyone gets to do that in life. And so now I wake up and I go, how can I help other people go help other people buy and sell real estate? And I feel that same level of that same level of fulfillment waking up and doing that job as I did waking up and helping people buy and sell real estate. And that framework is very different from how other people think. And it allows you to sustain the job during the shit times much differently than those who tap out and quit early.
But the foundation that you're laying in front of everybody it's priceless into noting finding the right path for you, obviously with the right intentions. It's not to say that money is not a part of the equation. For somebody to take in occupation tends to do an exchange of funds or finance in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
But to not be the leading indicator for that process, I think you're setting yourself up for failure if that is. And it is a byproduct of doing the right things the right way, but you'll find the happiness or the passion behind something there and a fulfilled life of success when every morning you wake up and you are doing something that's changing, that's making an impact. And as you mentioned with Charlie, and as you broke it down to, young Eric shooting hoops. And I think also the process of anybody that's out there that's hit things at a high level, out of the passion behind it is what keeps them going. Finding something like that, I think, is going to be massive. But let's take it to enough standpoint to financials. Okay, we get that. I think it's the same thing with family. Taking time for, our friends, our family, our children, our spouses, and really look at it and say, when's enough? For me, that's a massive indicator for myself, is to look at it to say, hey, I love the people that I work with and what I do on a day-to-day basis for business, but I love spending time with my family. And I think that prioritization into what your life is and what that looks like for you, everybody's different. And you're and to say that there's a one size fits all is nonsense. And I also think that there's evolution through your life and where you are in your time at that given place. For me, it looks at it to making massive impacts, as you mentioned, to the individuals that I work with and build long lasting relationships of value, reciprocated, right? To do big things together, but also to give my family the attention and time that they deserve as well. Because I found myself over time spending so much time away from the loved ones and away from the others, just being so deep into that you kind of forget, like, hey, these are my people. Like I can't forget them either. And boy, I don't know. It's just, to me, I think that kind of hits a lot on the head for the pursuit of more over all instances.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Gary was saying last week when we met, he said, unlike Greg, he said, I didn't wear a cupcake sweat hoodie, but I did wear a sweatshirt with Mary's face on it. He said, I wore a sweatshirt with my wife on it when I got home. And I'd put it on. And it was a reminder to me that my focus now, my focus was on my wife. And he said, I needed that reminder when I got home around what my job was and what my focus was when I got home. He's like, and now that's, now I wear socks that usually are that reminder. And so I thought it was interesting, just kind of the thinking through the idea of like those triggers or those mnemonic reminders of how do you disconnect, or how do you leave the job at the door. It's interesting. The most successful person in the history of real estate said, I had to put a sweatshirt on with my wife's face on it. And funny enough, wouldn't you know, my wife just so happened to have gotten me a sweatshirt with her faces on it. For Christmas, she had, I've probably told you, I like to make these ridiculous AI photos of my wife for entertainment. And so she got 6 or 8 of them and put them on a hoodie for Christmas. So
Eric, I have not seen this hoodie. I have not seen this. The audience would love to see this, I'm sure.
It might be back here. Hang on. We might be able to get it.
Just so everybody knows, this is why Eric and I are doing this, is because this is not scripted. We at the moment we know what we're going to talk about, but we really don't. Here it is. Look at this.
Is this not just beautiful and breathtaking?
That is the coolest.
Like,
so Eric, let me ask you: have you reciprocated, or the plans?
She has no desire to do that. let's be honest. She has no desire to wear my ugly face on
Okay,
any article of clothing.
hold on, Eric, but I got to ask this. So, audience, anybody who's out there tuning in, you specifically, would you love to see Eric's face on a shirt or a
No.
hoodie?
Mm-mm.
Put your likes in the
They would
comments.
not.
I want to see
They
it.
would not.
If we get enough of you, I'll talk Eric into making this happen.
Yeah.
So please let us know if you're interested in this man's face on a piece of clothing.
My mom's going to be the only one in the chat. She's like, I would love at least 24, please. No, so I thought it was interesting. You know, you something made me think of this idea. Is like you mentioned the Gen Zers, and let me just rail on them for fun.
Let's do it
here.
Yeah.
Boomers get the week off this week, as they're on the right side of this portion. You know, if you look at the trend of mental health professionals and you look at the trend of people seeking therapy or mental health support, it's growing only like the cost of universities and college tuition at this point. Over the past 20 years, it's gone up exponentially in the amount of licensed therapists and the amount of people seeking therapy. And listen, I am a huge advocate of therapy.
Sure.
I think we've probably mentioned it, but like it's probably one of the most impactful things that I've ever done. And simultaneously, I think that we have a therapy culture has gotten way too popular and become become the opportunity to blame bullshit onto some sort of identity and some sort of label instead of accepting that sometimes it's improbable to be perfect and to be fully healed, like someone that you saw on the internet on TikTok giving backroom basement advice on how you can be neurodivergent and neurotypical and any other trendy new label today. The reality is sometimes we're just not our best self. That doesn't mean that's who you are.
Right.
That might just be you're going through some shit. And when you get done with that phase, things will be better and you'll return back to that normal. Or maybe your diet's garbage. You're not, maybe the habits are garbage. Maybe there are a number of variables. People often seek the label of some sort of condition in order to justify that temporary feeling instead of accepting that not every day will you be 100%.
I think to that point, it's easier for most people to,
of course, it
point
is.
a finger. You know, it's easier to just deflect. And I think having self-awareness and taking ownership of situation is a very healthy, scenario into that. And I think it brings up the mentality of a good attitude. If you base it off of, if you stub your toe, and we've all done this in some form or fashion, or we talked about stepping on Legos, for a temporary moment of pain that you have, are you going to let that ruin your entire day? And for the most part, the answer is going to be no. So why let a bad phone call or a bad thought or a bad experience ruin the entire day, week, month, year, life?
Yeah.
So I think that it's staying positive into that place to say, hey, you know what? You can change things for a positive or a negative. It is a mindset sort of scenario. And I think that that's a valid thing to bring up when you talk about the pursuit of more and when enough is. I know we've covered a ton of ground into this, Eric. I mean, what's really stood out to you all the way through to the conversation to kind of recap or finish off the thought of, the pursuit of more, when is enough? What do you want to leave the audience with, if anything?
Yeah. Unless you're seeking more ice cream, more Bitcoin, or more sand on a beach and elf on a shelf, the pursuit of more is a fruitless endeavor. And so understanding the reason to do it is why it becomes wildly important in order to determine when the enough is. And that's an individual choice. And I say it's an individual choice because it's always a matter of what are you willing to trade or give up in exchange to have that pursuit.
Mm.
And what someone else is willing to trade or give up may not be what you would be willing to give up in order to gain that perceived level of success.
Mm.
And that becomes one of the main differentiators, is that it's very rare for someone to be wildly wealthy, wildly healthy, wildly happy in a relationship with kids that they give full attention to and who love them, and all of the other buckets of life.
Mm-hmm.
It's wildly uncommon to be level 10 at all of those aspects of life. And so realizing it's shades of a spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
and deciding which ones are more meaningful and important to you, and then allocating resources accordingly, is a far more strategic way to pursue the desired outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And life is long, and it has chapters
Mm-hmm.
that don't mean that each chapter doesn't constitute the entire book. What I mean by that, Greg, is right now what I see is a lot of people who are acting irrationally, a lot of rational people being irrational. Now, I don't know if you've noticed or not, Greg, but in real estate, there haven't been a lot of sales that have happened in the past 12 months.
Sure.
Okay. We sold fewer houses last year than all the way back to 1995.
Mm-hmm.
We added 90 million people to the U.S. population during that same time frame, and we have the same amount of sales.
Crazy.
So you could say that we got a whole lot more people eating pie with a lot less pie to split amongst those people in the real estate industry.
Yep.
And so I see a lot of rational people acting irrationally. And, the other day, Hudson taught me this lesson, like usual. And in typical fashion, he acted without thought, and so did I.
Mm-hmm.
And, we finished remodeling our house, and we, like idiots, chopped off the back of it, and we installed just like a wall of glass. And so we got these windows, and they're like 8 feet wide by 8 feet tall. They weigh about 600 pounds or so. And Hudson comes running across the house, and then he like Spider-Man kicks the window.
Oh, no.
Yeah, right. And that was my thought too. And so what do? Like, I yell from across the house at him.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, no glass breaks and nothing cuts him. And so I yell at him though, right? And he goes, "Dad, you don't have to be so angry." And I said,
"Wow, how'd that make you feel, Eric?"
I said, "Okay." I said, I could see why. I said, "You know what? I'm not angry. I see why it seems like I'm angry though. Can I share something with you?" Which is, I wasn't angry, but I was really scared.
Mm-hmm.
I was really scared that you were going to get hurt really badly. And fear looks an awful lot like anger.
Mm.
Most of the time when we're afraid, it seems like we're really angry.
Mm-hmm.
And I see a lot of entrepreneurs right now who are acting or reacting irrationally. And it's easy to mistake anger for fear.
Wow.
Because fear causes us to do and say foolish things.
Mm-hmm.
And it all looks an awful lot like anger. And so what I've been reminding entrepreneurs right now is don't confuse someone's fear with their character. Don't mistake fear for character, because when people are afraid for how they'll provide or what they're going to lose and the challenge they're going through, their fear shows up and looks an awful lot like anger.
Mm. And that, again, providing perspective into just life, right? I mean, everybody goes through different challenges and through chapters of life. And as you went through that, and, through the pursuit of more or having excess or enough, you're going to have ebbs and flows. But having that storytelling of perspective, I think we've all been there where, especially if you have a significant other or children into that standpoint, where that fear of the pain that your child might feel can come across as anger or upset, and the voices do get raised. And I think that, to me, that provides perspective for all of us not to be so quick to judge somebody. We don't know what someone's going through, what they're dealing with, what they're experiencing, and our perspective based off of what we're assuming might not be the reality, what the person is. So I think that the message to me, and this is just kind of coming out of nowhere, continue to be kind. I mean, kindness is not something that is ever going out of style. And I think ultimately everyone could use a little bit of that. So
Sure.
I think that's a good message to kind of keep and project out there, Eric. But I mean, I love this. I think ultimately we've covered a lot of ground. We talked a lot about, I'm very hungry now that we're talking about ice cream. And just to that standpoint, I got to listen to a few albums for sure. And just really talk about life and what's important to us and kind of inward to it, self-perspective for sure.
Greg, I want to leave you with, as we wrap up here, a reminder. Please, this weekend, do not superhero kick panes of glass. It is a bad idea, okay? Eat as much ice cream as you would like.
Okay.
Do not judo chop windows, okay? That's my advice for you, Greg.
I will not do that. I'll also let Olivia know not to do that. I will let her know this story, living through Hudson, to not do that to the back of our house. I think that would be a very bad experience to try to attempt to. So I love it, Eric. I appreciate the time. And again, this is just a great recap to it. As you mentioned, though, as you were talking about statistics, stats, and what's going on actively to the marketplace and for real estate professionals, I'd be remiss if I didn't let the audience know or remind the audience that every Monday you do an incredible Market Monday. It really covers so many spectrums and facets of the real estate industry. Not to mention, you're going to learn a lot. You're going to be updated, but you get to hang out with Eric.
That's right.
You get to throw some great quips in there. I know you're always picking at the audience, and in the best of ways, entertaining as educating. So we'll have information in the show notes below. Tune into that for sure every Monday, live with Eric on that Market Monday for sure.
Thanks, buddy.
Awesome. Take care. See you guys.